10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
And we are live. Good evening, Dr. Rob. How are you?
I am fantastic. So excited to be with you, my friend, and to just join you in some of the wonderful things that you're doing around the globe. And it's a great day here. I'm in Atlanta, although I don't think you know this yet. We've just signed on a house. We're going to move to San Diego. So that's in the near future.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Well, I know you, Dr. Rob. I met you through Facebook last year, and you have such an open personality, and we've worked on some projects together with the Alma family. But for those of the audience members that do not know you, that are not acquainted with you, I just want to read your bio to them. You were kind enough when I asked to send your bio, and there are a few points and a few paragraphs that I want to highlight here about your leadership skills and everything that you've been busy with, because I realized that here at Meticulous Moments, of course, we facilitate community upliftment through leadership development, and that is exactly what I see shining through in your biography. So for the audience, here is Dr. Rob's biography. Dr. Rob McCleland is obsessed with ensuring leaders gain clarity both personally and professionally. Over the last 2 decades, he's led a college campus in Washington, D.C., a medical foundation in the Silicon Valley, and an international organization with 700 hospitals and schools on 5 continents. John Maxwell personally recruited Rob to lead Equip, the largest leadership development organization in the world. Rob went on to serve as the founding president of the John Maxwell Leadership Foundation before launching Upward Leadership to coach executive leaders and their teams. Dr. McCleland is an internationally recognized expert in business growth strategy. In his travel to over 70 countries, he has done strategic planning for the largest privately held company in the world, has trained leaders in the World Health Organization, and annually trained CEO banking leaders across Asia. Rob says, when I see my new friends choose to take intentionally bold steps towards clarity and decisiveness in their lives and business, that's when I feel like a winner. And let me tell you, audience, Dr. Rob's CV goes on for miles. My goodness, Dr. Rob, you have been busy.
You know what? When I hear all of those things, Juanita, I think one of 2 things. I think, wow, this guy's had some incredible opportunities, or maybe he just can't hold down a job. I'm not really sure what. So.
I think it's the first option. And, I made a banner for you here at the bottom, and it says loving guy and cool dude. And I added the hashtag history maker. To me, Dr. Rob, you are a history maker.
Well, thank you. And by God's grace, that is true. If I can change my history and my story and then come along others to help make history and make the world a better place, I don't know of a better life.
Amen. Amen. To serve our purpose is the highest calling. I believe that, and God is so good. And I was thinking today when I read through your bio, when I was preparing for this session, my first question that I wanted to ask was about your childhood. I want to know how you grew up, what stood out in your childhood, because you are such an interesting character, Dr. Rob. You have such an interesting personality and a whole diverse, array of leadership qualities. What was your childhood like?
Yeah, my childhood, for those who know me, it helps them believe that there is a God in heaven. And let me tell you why. I came from a very poor, very abusive background. My mother was, unfortunately, an alcoholic. I had never met my dad. And so she was married and divorced 4 times by the time I was in 5th grade in grade school. And that really wasn't bad at all. I mean, there were different guys at the house, but unfortunately, she would drink every night, and then she would bring home a different stranger to the house at 2 a.m. When the bars closed. And so it became very early on, my sisters and I would sort of huddle together, and it was more of a protection thing because when you bring home inebriated guys and there's kids in the house, that's just not a good scenario.
Yeah.
Supposedly, I had a really terrible childhood, but somebody forgot to tell me because it was hard, but we lived in an area that was very poor. We all had government housing. Back then, they didn't even have welfare or food stamps they would give you. You would go stand in line and get government food subsidies once a month. And so you get all these boxes of bulk food you could take home to feed the poor people. At the same time, I was always industrious and a hard worker and would ride my little bike down to the store down the hill about a mile and sweep their parking lot every night and get a candy bar and a loaf of bread or a thing of milk or whatever our family needed. And so I didn't look at myself as supplying for the family. It was really, I'd say, part survival and part wanting to say, hey, look, I was able to do something good for the world here.
Beautiful.
And so I just had that attitude from the beginning. After a while, things did get worse. Both of my sisters had ended up running away. And there was a family that took me in off the streets that I knew their son. He was like a little brother to me. I'd helped him in sports and we were buddies. And they kept saying, hey, Rob, just come stay with us. Come stay, because they saw the abuses and things we were going through. But I was too embarrassed to do that. One time my mom got really bad and was being super abusive and lying and doing a bunch of other stuff. And I finally, as a kid, I didn't have the emotional wherewithal to deal with it. So it was my freshman year of high school. And I just broke down in tears, didn't know what to do. And we didn't have a phone. We didn't have, electricity sometimes, but borrowed a friend's phone and said, could you call this guy? And I gave him the name and they said, you mean the highway patrolman guy? I said, yeah, that was the family. And I said, would you just come get me? And he came over and he got me. And all I remember is I had my little junky set of golf clubs and the clothes I had got on, and I threw them in his old pickup truck and we drove off. And that's the day my life started over, where for the first time I would go into a family. And if I was doing things wrong, they would discipline me, but they would feed me 3 meals a day and you could have it. And it was just life-changing to me. And I really began to blossom, but it wouldn't have been without somebody else showing me incredible love that they didn't have to.
That is amazing. One phone call, one family changing your life and putting you on this road, on your path of destiny. Mm-hmm. And you have touched so many lives in so many countries across the globe. And I see God's hand in all of it. I see him really guiding you. And you being a leader and an entrepreneur from a very, very young age. Mm-hmm. That is exceptional. And I believe it all made you stronger so that you are now able to do the magnificent things that you are busy doing in the world. So I wanted to ask you, when did you realize that you're a born leader? What was that moment that you looked at your life and you thought, I'm going to do something amazing?
I remember that night I was in college and we were at a college retreat, and there were some leaders over in one area. And then there were a bunch of us. And so you got a bunch of college guys around. We're full of testosterone and half of us were athletes. And we're up at this retreat center. And we said, hey, let's go raid the leader's cabin in the middle of the night or do something stupid. I forgot what it was. And I'm sitting there going, oh, that would be awesome. We could do. But I decided I'm not going to say anything. I'll just let them do it. And so I just kind of stood back and they're like, hey, we could do this and this. And someone else goes, or what about? And well, but that wouldn't work because, and they're just kind of arguing. And it was taking everything within me to not say anything. But I thought, Rob, don't jump in. Just you sit back. And finally, this had gone on about 35 minutes and people were starting to wander off because they're like, this isn't going to happen. Yeah. And I said, hey guys, get in here. I'll tell you what, how about if we boom? And I acted just like I was a quarterback in a huddle. And I said, we're do this, this,
Yeah.
and this, and what do you think? And they're like, this is awesome. Let's go. And so then I tried to back off a little bit from there because I wanted them to have the experience, but we all did it. We went over there, we snuck in, we picked them up in their sleeping bags, took them out. I mean, it was the most fun ever. We all went back. And so now we're back in our cabin and everybody's high-fiving and saying, wow, that was fantastic. You know how fun? And I just saw it back and I saw, look at all the joy that people were getting from participating in this, because they had somebody who could step in and give good leadership for a moment, but then didn't have to take all the glory. And I remember sitting there that night saying, Rob, you tried your hardest to not be a leader and you couldn't do it. And so you had better kind of rein this in, because that's part of how God has wired you up on the inside. And can you keep doing it so that you do great work and all the other people get the glory? And then that's been my lifelong goal since then.
That's amazing, amazing service leadership right there, uplifting them and really bringing them together. I think back to my days at university as well. And I mean, it's just so amazing to make those friends there. And some of them become lifetime friends, but we always need a leader. We always need someone that takes the lead and that gives direction. And you certainly did that, Dr. Rob, when you were at the John Maxwell Leadership Foundation. Would you like to tell us some of the highlights when you were busy, building out into the world and doing great things?
Yeah, it'd be a privilege. I heard John speak, and John's, in my opinion, the greatest leadership speaker, teacher in the history of the world. You know, he's got well over 100 books. He's an unbelievable man. And so he had taught me a lot. And even though we lead things differently and we're different people, when it comes to putting in the time and then communicating leadership principles well, there's no one better than John Maxwell in the world. He's fantastic.
Beautiful.
And so I was a follower of his. I was purchasing his products, and I went to a conference that he did. And at that conference, and he said, and now we're in starting to talk about all these countries that they were in and heading into. And they said, and someday we're going to be in every country of the world. And I thought, wow, okay, that's something right there. That would be unbelievable. No one's ever done that.
Yeah.
Because when he said getting into a country, he meant taking in leadership development, character development content in their own language inside the borders of their country. So how are you going to do that in North Korea? How are you going to do that in Somalia or Djibouti or Eritrea or any of the stand countries, right? I mean, somebody's going to die here. And so when he said that, I thought, that is a great, how would you do that? And I went home thinking, how would you do that? What about that? At the time, I was leading a fairly good organization. So I got in touch with the person who was directing the largest leadership development effort in the world, one of John Maxwell's organizations called Equip. His name was Dr. John Hull. And I connected with him and I said, okay, what are the next countries you're hoping to reach? And he's like, well, we're thinking about this and this and this. I said, well, hey, I can help with that one and this one and this one, because we have hospitals or things in the organization that I run that I can get across that border. I can help you. And he's like, really? Okay, well, let's talk. And so talked, got a plan, and I started helping them. And so isn't this funny? I didn't work for them, but anytime some leader has a great vision, it just sucks you in. You want to be a part of it. Yeah. So I was doing that, and all of a sudden there was only less than 30 organizations left to reach. And so I kept saying, hey, what's the hardest one left to reach? What's the hardest? And pretty soon, what I would say is he started giving me the Heisman. Now, that's Heisman is an award that they give out in college football in the United States. But the statue is a statue of a guy holding a football going like this, like, hey, no. And all of a sudden,
stay away.
Like, hey, we got this. Leave me alone. And I'm like, dude, I'm trying to help you. What's the hardest one? And I don't know what was going on in their dynamics. But I had talked to them, and I had said, hey, I love the curriculum you guys use, but I don't think it's the most effective. And all of a sudden, people are saying, wait, you think you can do curriculum better than John Maxwell? I said, that's not what I said. I said, it's not the most effective because it's teaching. It's almost like you're a sage from the stage and you're giving them information, but it's not coming alongside as a guide from the side and making sure that they're actually seeing these things become true in their own life and helping other people. And so I contacted the organization and I said, may I have your permission to take your work and then take it to Far East Russia? And I mean, there's a place in Russia that when I was in California, I was closer to that place in Russia than that place was to Moscow by over 1,000 miles. That's how big Russia is. And so it's way over by Japan on the east and far East Russia. And we were working with the school there. And so I took in the material and got with a bunch of business leaders and did it a different way that I thought would work more effective. And it was fantastic. It came out great. So I wrote up a white paper on it. I sent it back to the people at Maxwell. And then a couple of years later, the person who was leading all of that, he was stepping away and they were looking for the new person who was going to lead Equip, who was going to be the executive director for that largest thing. Well, John Maxwell and those guys said, hey, this is a time of transition. What are we doing now that we should stop doing, or what do we want to start doing as we go to look for this new person? And so they decided, well, we want to start doing more things like A, B, and C. And one of them goes, there's some clown who wrote a white paper. He had done some of that, and I think we have it. And John's like, well, let me. Years ago. Yeah, goes, gets it, reads through it. And he goes, I know Rob McCleland. I've met him a couple of times, and I had gone to some of his fundraisers, and we had played golf at Pebble Beach. But I would know him. I would say, hey, John, Rob McCleland, and he would say, of course, Rob. But I'm sure he didn't really know my name at that time. So he reads through it, and he goes, do you know this guy? Well, his best friend knew me pretty well, and he goes, well, go get him. And so I get a call, and they say, hey, they would like to interview you to become the new guy leading the largest leadership development thing in the world. And they'd like to interview you over 2.5 days at Pebble Beach. And I started laughing. I'm like, oh, is that how you do it at that level? Yeah. Would you like to go out to an interview? And so I'm like, well, let me check my schedule and I will get back to you, that type thing. Because I was more like, hey, dude, let's talk, And so flew out to Pebble Beach. I'm meeting with John Maxwell, Mark Cole, his right-hand guy, and the CEO of all of his companies is here. Tom, his best friend, is right here. And we're sitting down now, and they're supposed to interview me over the next 2.5 days. And I sat down, I said, hey, John, this really might be a short interview. And he said, why would you say that? And I said, well, if there's one condition you would have to meet, or I know that I'm not your person. Well, I just want to tell you, Juanita, John Maxwell hates it when you hijack his interviews, when he's like, hey, he's in charge here. And I'm sitting down going, this might be a very short interview. Why would you say that? And stuff. And I said, you know what? Over 10 years ago, I heard you say, someday we're going to be in every nation of the world. And I said, something jumped in my heart that day. And I said, let me tell you a couple of things you don't know. And that is as far as, well, do you know how many countries there are in the world? I said, I don't want to embarrass you. There's 196. And I said, do you know how many of them you're in right now? Again, you're in 197. I know this because I've helped you get in 6 or 8 of the harder ones. And every time that the person who used to have my job would come through Chicago, I'd get a nice bottle of wine, take them out to a steak dinner and say, what's your hardest one left? Give it to us. We'll take it. And I said, and so if you hire me, we will be committed to reaching inside the borders of every country of the world. And John said, well, Rob, I'm not sure it can be done. And I leaned forward and I said, John, if you hire me, we will either reach every country of the world, or when you find my body, it will be pointed in that direction. I said, but I will not fail. And he went, and he looked over at Mark, and Mark's kind of like, yeah. Looked over at Tom. Tom's like, I told you, this dude, he's crazy, So he looks back at me and he goes, okay, can you reach all of the rest of them in 3 years? And I said, in 3 years, it's taken you 17 years and you've done the easy ones. And this is, now that was all in my head, Juanita. What actually came out of my mouth was, yes, sir, we'll get it done. And we did. We put a new plan together, and then
I love that.
even by faith, when we had some hard things to do, I picked a date and I picked a place. There was a little island nation off of Fiji called Kiribati. We could have gone there anytime we wanted, but I saved that so I could invite all the John Maxwell board members to fly into Fiji. And we brought Kiribati over, and we celebrated the only company in the history of the world to do leadership development, character development inside the nations of every country of the world. And we got it done. And so who gets to change John Maxwell's biography? But when he's introduced now, they'll say some nice things. And the only person to ever lead an organization inside the borders of every nation of the world, please welcome with us, Dr. John, and every time they say that, I thought, I had a little piece of that. So that's the story.
Just a little piece of that. Oh my goodness, I love that. I was chuckling when you talked, about the self-talk in your mind and what actually came out of your mouth. I've also been in situations like that.
Yeah.
Where I'm thinking one thing, but I'm saying something else.
Okay, let's go. Yeah, those are great times. Well, and if you're wired up to be a leader, the answer is going to be yes. You just don't know how you're going to get there yet.
Yes, it's already established in our hearts and our minds. So that's the result that we get.
Yes.
Love that, Doc.
Uh-huh. So tell me about you. What are some of your favorite leadership initiatives these days?
Just repeat that, Doc. Sorry, we had a little connection problem there.
Yeah, I just said, tell me about you and what are some of your favorite leadership initiatives that you're working on these days?
Yeah, I've expanded so much. I've been scaling since I started with the podcast. It first started with the podcast, and then I interviewed, 100 people last year between June and December, all about community upliftment and leadership development. So I went out into all the areas. I spoke to people in the Army and the Navy, authors and speakers, athletes, and it's just been such a journey. And from there, I went into writing a chapter in anthology, and I really expanded the business. I've now started a Meticulous Martial Arts Mastermind because I've been a martial artist for 7 years. And I also opened Meticulous Safaris. I'm going to start doing safaris here in South Africa. So that will also, of course, include leadership development and training. So looking at, great leaders like you, it's an inspiration to us, to see you at work and the things that you do. And I remember reading in your bio, and I'm going to quote it here, that you are an internationally recognized expert in business, growth, strategy. Any specific formula that you employ, or do you take each case individually? How do you approach that?
Yeah, 87% of all strategic plans that you will hire somebody to come in and work on a plan, you get an outside expert, they work on you at the plan, they give it to you, and then they leave. 87% are never fully implemented because it was their plan. Wow. And even though you paid money for it, you could have done it if you had them there to help you, because they had all the knowledge and they had all the experience. And when they were talking to you, you had written down some great stuff, even put stars by it. Like, this is so good. But then 4 days later, you went back and looked at it and you go, wow, there's a lot of stars. That was really good. What did that mean? And so what we've discovered is that our company that I work for, I'm an employee, I don't own the company. It's called Generational. We just won Consulting Firm of the Year, beat out all the huge companies. Why? Because over 95% of our plans get fully implemented. And here's why, Juanita, it answers your question. It's because how many plans have you guys done? We don't do plans. Our clients do plans. We facilitate a world-class process that takes them from, we don't even know where to do, we're losing money, and we take them through the right direction over 2.5 days, excuse me, that by the end, they see by the middle of day 2, they're like, do you know what could happen then if we just keep working with them? And so when we're done, we finish with a team building thing that I've never seen it happen without tears of joy for people for being on the same team together and saying, we can do it, let's go. And then they take their plan, not our plan. They take their plan and they begin to implement it. Every single step of that plan has, what is it? What is it exactly? Who's the champion? Who's in charge of that area? What other 2 people are on the team? What date is that due by? And then what's the next step after that? And we have that for over 120 different areas, and it's all built in 2.5 days by the client. So it's just this unbelievable process that we take people through. The guy who built it was actually in the Army Academy. He went to West Point. He's not a very large guy at all, and he played quarterback at West Point. If there's anyone who shouldn't ever have played quarterback on the Point Army football team, it's this guy. But his leadership was so good, you couldn't hold him down. And so he had been doing that for government and for different businesses. He developed the process. Then he got together what he considers are his best team ever. There's 11 or 12 of us on his team, and we've all gone in and perfected it. And then that's what I do as one of the things I'm choosing to do in my life. And so while that is specifically for people, let me give you just like one little hint that you can work with your business owners or people on, is everybody wants to talk about how's business. Oh, good. Well, our revenue is doing well. Okay, so what's it look like? Well, we made $2 million this year. Okay, here's what we teach them. Well, what were your expenses? Oh, about 2.1. Then get out of business, right? Because what happens is, revenue is your top line. That's every cent that came in. So we teach them this. Yeah. Revenue is vanity. Profit is sanity. That if you are doing something, making a lot of money, but there's not a way after taxes to keep a big chunk in your pocket, then you owe it to yourself, to your team, and to your clients to stop doing that, because you're going to wear yourself out and you're not going to be good for anybody. So how do you discover which of your activities actually are going to can be shaped in a way that they're going to keep a lot of money in your pocket? The biggie that we find there is that so often people have been doing something a certain way because that's how they were taught to do it, or that's how they put the business together. And with zero exaggeration here, they later discover 85% of all the activities, all the work, everything that we're doing, everyone on the team, 5% of it is getting us about 15% of our gross profit. What that means is the 15% of your activities are getting you 85% of your gross profit. Well, I have an idea. Stop doing some of those ones that aren't as good and take all of that time and effort and money and thinking and strategy, build a plan, move them over to this side, and then take off. And that's what we do.
Yeah. That's amazing. Sometimes it's just that little tweak. The vision is there, the goal is there, all the resources are there, the knowledge and the skills. It's just to do it maybe in a different way, like you've taught them. That is a wonderful strategy, especially that you take the content and the plans and that they have created, because that's something that they are passionate about. So I love that. Absolutely wonderful information to have. Very edifying, Doctor. And I read. Thank you, Doctor. I read that you were in 70 countries, 70, not 17, 70. And I had to wonder, would there be one country that would be the top of your list?
Yeah, as far as a country I was in that my wife wasn't there, that I thought I've got to bring her back here, was in Prague, specifically the Charles Bridge going over the water at night. And they have all these old artisans that are hundreds of year old families, and they're singing in shining shoes. And I'm looking down going, that is the most romantic bridge I've ever seen in my life. And I'm here as a single dude going, And so I thought I do love Prague. That was fun. But I was with a group of people who have traveled as much or more than I was. And we did a little exercise, or about 8 of us. And we went around the table and said, you could go spend 2 weeks anywhere in the world. Where would you go? And I picked 1 week in Indonesia, in Bali, in Indonesia, where I have many, many friends there. And then I picked the other week in Banff in the Canadian Rockies and hiking. But I caught this one guy who had traveled far more than anyone else. He goes, that's very easy for me. Week 1 would be Durban, South Africa. And week 2 would be Durban, South Africa. And I was so I'm like, what are you talking about? He goes, if you're there at one of the right times of the year, and you have this mountainside going down, and that's where the waters come together around the bottom of and it's turbid waters, and the sun's coming in, and all the clouds are hanging like little cotton balls along the mountains. And you're up on a veranda with an adult beverage of choice, looking down on all of this. And you go, this is the greatest place in the world. And so I have never been to South Africa. It's not on my list so far, but someday I'm going to come see you, and I'm going to get to Durban, and my wife and I are going to be up there with those little clouds that are hanging on the hills.
The cotton balls. Well, Doctor, you and your family are always welcome here in South Africa. My door is always open to you, and it is exactly how he described it. It is such a beautiful sight. So definitely something that needs to go on your list.
Well, that sounds fantastic. And when you put those safaris together, if you want them to be part leadership development and part safari and part fun, let's make sure to have some conversations. I used to lead things for some very wealthy donors where we had those different elements, and we learned a ton, and they turned into really, really, they could make money, but everybody were saying this is the greatest thing they'd ever done. And so you're the perfect person to lead that. And any way I can serve you, let me know.
Thank you, Doctor. I'm definitely going to include you. I know that would just be a phenomenal extra to put on. And, it's all about development. My heart is really developing myself and others and community. So, no, we'll definitely have that talk. And I appreciate that. And, I'm very focused on family values as well. It's very important for me that these family values and morals and just a structure, because I also grew up in a broken home. My mom was a single mom. My dad was an alcoholic, but luckily, I didn't grow up with him. I never knew him. And it's always so wonderful to hear when I speak to speakers and guests that they love their family, that they invest that time. And tell us more about your beautiful family. I know you have children and grandchildren and your wonderful wife of 37 years.
My wonderful wife, she deserves a medal. We've been married 37 years. And anyone who knows her will tell you she's probably the nicest person ever. And then you meet me and you think, well, she'd have to be. But I'm going to see if I can do this. This is a picture of her. I love this picture because it almost looks like she's going, yes, you may kiss the queen. So this is a picture of me and Mrs. McCleland.
So beautiful.
Isn't she something? Believe it or not, she is older than me, but she looks so stinking good. And so we met. I fell head over heels in love with her. And she's just as lovely of a person as she looks like she is. And then we decided, let's start having kids. Ends up, we couldn't have kids. And it ends up, it was me. It's never the guy. It's always, the lady has trouble. And so we decided, okay, well, let's adopt some kids. And so we have 3 adopted children, 4 grandchildren. And we've had the same thing that you would expect with your adopted kids where, you're not allowed to have favorites, but my daughter's my favorite. And, she's the only daddy's girl type thing. And she's been my favorite, even though I've had to go visit her in jail sometimes or things like that. So you think you have a family? We have a family. And our family is filled with unconditional love. And at the same time, we don't have our act together, but we're going to get there together. And we really are very, very thankful for the fact that we can be forgiven by God. We forgive each other, and we're going to believe the best in each other, even though we don't always act like it. And so those are some of our family values. We have a very, very close, wonderful family of a bunch of people who don't have their act together.
That's the way it should be. That makes life interesting. It makes life fun, and it's keeping it real. One of the hashtags I love to use is hashtag keeping it real. I mean, we all have family things that we go through, it's just amazing to hear that. Thank you for sharing that with us. I wanted to ask you, what is one thing, as we are sitting here, you are in the States, I am in South Africa, anything, I mean, you just came back from a trip, you have your beautiful family, you're excelling and exceeding in the leadership space. God is good. That's the best thing about it. What are you grateful for in this moment?
Yeah, a couple of things. For someone like me who came out of a broken home, didn't know what to do, very, very poor, met a little gal from Montana, and she was off on her own. And both at about the same time, we heard that there was a God and he could even forgive someone like us. And so we began sort of this faith journey together. And we just started spending these years saying, how am I wired up? How are you wired up? And I take responsibility to help her be as successful as she can. And she does the same for me. And we've built something now that other people look at and they're like, oh my goodness. Sometimes it's like, you guys are so lucky, right? You're so lucky. Well, and I agree. We are so lucky that we worked hard for 37 years and did the right thing over and over. And when we didn't do the right thing, we were the first one. I'm the first one to and I'll look right in the eye and I'll say, you know what? When I did that, that was wrong. That's my mistake. That is 100% on me. I'm fully responsible. And I would like you to forgive me, but I really want to know, what can I do to make it right? And so teaching people to step up and take responsibility for their lives. And so building that, doing that, and now getting to this place where we have options. My favorite thing in the world is looking around the neighborhoods and finding some little kid like me who thinks he has what it takes. He's a little cocky maybe because he's trying to hide all of his insecurities because he has this terrible home life and all he needs is somebody to love them. And so we take in more people and help more people and volunteer more. And it's, some people go like, you guys are so nice. No, we do it selfishly. We get so much joy and love out of it. We do it, enjoy helping. I want to tell one other quick story. Once when I was visiting my daughter in jail, and never a good day when a dad has to see his little girl in jail, right? And she loves her dad. I mean, loves her dad, and I love her, and we knew that. So I'm waiting, and all of a sudden the door opens, and I'm escorted in, and she's in this orange jumpsuit and a piece of plexiglass, and I'm walking over to it. As soon as she sees me, she bursts into tears, and of course I burst into tears, and we're sitting there crying, and I put my hand on the glass, and she puts her hand on the glass, and I said, "Hey, Boo, I need to tell you something." And she goes, "No, Dad, you don't need to tell me." I said, "No, sweetheart, I need to tell you." She goes, "No, you don't need to tell me. I already know." I said, "Sweetie, I really do." She goes, "Dad, you don't need to tell me. Do you want me to say it?" And we're both crying. And I said, "Sure, you say it." She goes, "You and Mom, you love me way more than you did yesterday, but not nearly as much as you're going to tomorrow. But today I'm in jail." And she used my words. She goes, "And you're wondering what kind of knucklehead decisions I'm making because I'm ruining my life." And so I'm crying. And I said, "Sweetheart, do you really believe that?" And it's the only time in my life my daughter manned up on me. She got right up next to the plexiglass. She says, "Dad, don't you ever say that again. You and Mom have done nothing but love me and pray for me and help me and discipline me and do everything right." She goes, "I'm ruining my life, but those are my bad choices. You're the best dad in the history of the world, and I love you so much, and I know how much you love me." Well, then I couldn't even talk. I'm just bawling. And it's like, hey, she's in trouble, but she knows she has a dad who loves her. And so I can die and go to heaven at that moment. that my little girl knows her dad loves her, even in her worst points. And so she doesn't have to try to hide her worst self. Instead, she can run to me during that time. And so I was just thinking, perhaps there's somebody in your life or somebody that's listening to this who really needs to have that conversation and say, hey, you know what? I know things have been a little tense recently, but I want you to know something. I love you way more than I did yesterday, but not nearly as much as I'm going to tomorrow. And so that's how loved you are. Right in the middle of this, it's kind of tense. So since I love you so much, what can I do to make sure you're making the best decisions possible? And just for people to know that, I think it changes their entire life.
Wow. That is, I was going to ask for words of wisdom. The Holy Spirit led you to share that story because those are words of wisdom. There's someone, I believe it with my heart, that had to hear that. And I just want to come on everything that's done for people in the world, globally, for your family. It starts with God. You always honor God in everything that you do. That makes me happy. That makes me filled with joy to see.
Yay. Well, come see us in San
You're just
Diego. You
spreading
have a
that
new,
love of
you have a
God.
new
And I
vacation
appreciate you
home
for
now.
making time. I know you've been away from home.
Yeah, but Juanita, you have a new vacation home in San Diego now. So get some friends and come on.
Well, thank you, Dr. Rob. I will definitely do that. And I appreciate you so much. And to the Meticulous Moments audience, follow Dr. Rob on social media. He has a heart of gold. Pray for him and his family and cheer him on because he's really doing great things out there. Thank you so much.
You are so welcome. It's always such a pleasure to be with you. So much love from me and my family, and look forward to being together our next time.
Amen, Dr. Rob, and I'll see you on the safari. You and your family will have that chat.
We're looking forward to it already.
Thank you, Dr. Rob. Have a wonderful day. Bye.
Thanks, you too. Bye-bye.
Hi, my name is Jose Escobar, and I'm the founder and CEO of the Connected Leaders Academy. We're the #1 fastest growing community and tribe of some of the highest level entrepreneurs all around the country and around the world. We're in 36 states across the U.S., in 11 international countries, and over 240 plus members, growing every single day. And I'm honored, excited, and I'm glad to say that I'm proud to be the official sponsor of the Meticulous Moments podcast with Juanita Kapp. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm excited for this journey.
Hey everybody, my name is Patrick Rude. I'm the owner of Rude Financial Services, a proud sponsor of the Meticulous Moments podcast, hosted and directed by the beautiful, strong, and intelligent Juanita Kapp. I cannot tell you enough about what this woman has done with this podcast and the effect that she has had on me and all of the other sponsors and people that listen. Don't miss it.